It's top of the hour. Becky, thank you for putting that in the chat. I'll give the mic over to give a brief introduction of this meeting, and then we'll hand it over to our presenter today, who's Austin. This will be a very interactive session, and hopefully it's going to be bringing you lots of value on what Copilot is and how you can use it in your business. Mike?
All right, guys. Welcome everyone to our webinar today. This is going to be our Microsoft Copilot webinar. Excited to have our special presenter, Austin Hampton, here with us today, an expert in the space. And so we're grateful to have him come and share his expertise with us. We would love this to be interactive. Feel free to hit us in the chat with your comments. Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll be asking for your feedback. We want it to be a great experience where you feel like there's a lot that you can take away from this meeting and the time that you spend with us here on the webinar today. Thank you for being here. My name is Mike Harrington. I'm a VP of Sales and Marketing here at i.t.NOW. i.t.NOW does outsourced IT and cybersecurity services for businesses here in Utah and across the United States. And we've been getting a ton of requests from our clients lately on how to use Copilot. So that's really the impetus for this particular webinar. And the next one, this next month as well, is understanding how to use that. A lot of our clients already have Copilot as part of their Microsoft Office 365 suite, but we found that they don't always know how to leverage it the best way to get the best bang for their buck. And for some of the licensing, they're already spending in a lot of cases. And we wanted to bring in an expert to talk about that, maybe show some of the use cases, help you guys understand how to better leverage it to build efficiency in your businesses. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Austin Hampton. Austin is a seasoned Microsoft specialist with over 5 years of experience in PAX 8. Over the past 2 years, he has dedicated himself to understanding, positioning, and unlocking the value of Copilot, helping organizations transform their business processes and achieve tangible results. In his first Copilot workshop, Austin worked with a partner's CTO to streamline the creation of root cause analysis reports, reducing the process from 5 hours to 1. This resulted in $48,000 in annual savings, freeing up valuable time for higher priority initiatives. His presentation, The Value of Generative AI and Its Applications to Business, has become a fan favorite, earning widespread praise for its clarity, depth, and actionable insights, with certifications including MS 900, SC 900, and PL 900. And as the winner of Microsoft's Global Pitch Perfect Award for Copilot and Modern Work, Austin brings a wealth of knowledge and credibility to every workshop he leads. Driven by an insatiable passion for learning, Austin describes himself as a collector of skill sets, a mindset that shapes his approach to mastering and teaching new technologies, from building a functional desktop game in under 20 minutes using generative AI to uncovering an innovative business use cases. He thrives on exploring the transformative potential of AI to overcome personal and professional skill defects. His workshops are designed to empower attendees with an AI-first mindset, offering practical insights into what generative AI is, how it works, and how to integrate it into daily workflows for maximum impact. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Austin. Austin, take it away here, bud. We're excited to hear what you have to say.
Hooking up the right mic on. Can you hear me now? Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. Mic turned off on me. Didn't know that had a sleep mode. Sorry about that, guys.
You're good.
Mike, my apologies. If I had known that you were going to just read my bio as my introduction, I would have made it way shorter. That was definitely written as something to be included in a pamphlet or on a description of the webinar, not read aloud as an introduction. So my apologies. That was a mouthful of things to say about me. I appreciate you going through it. And again, thank you everybody for joining me. Today, I want to just give everybody that is here in attendance a fast pass to cut through the 9 months of trial and error working with this technology that it took me to figure out all of the insights that I'm going to share with you. And I really am hopeful that one of the core things we're all going to take away from today's session is an actionable set of core tenets that will, if you abide by them throughout your generative AI interactions, immediately improve the outcome of your results that you get with the technology. And so in order to do that, I find that it's helpful to go about it a certain way. So real quick, This is going to be unlocking the transformative power of Microsoft Copilot. Here is my obligatory about me slide. This is everything I was going to talk about here was covered in my about. Mike, thank you for taking this slide on the chin for me. And without any further ado, what are we actually going to talk about today? We are going to get into my value of generative AI presentation, going over what does this actually do and what's really valuable about it. I really am a big believer of the Simon Sinek start with why. And so we're going to lead there. Why is this? What is the value? Why is this important? We're going to learn a little bit about how generative AI works and it's able to achieve this primary value proposition. We're going to learn what I mean when I say creating expertise and skill set out of thin air. And then we're going to dig into Copilot as an AI solution for your business. All right. So without any further ado, the value of generative AI. So to really understand why this technology is so revolutionary, why this is so important, and why everybody is taking an hour out of your busy day to let a 12-year-old talk to you about Microsoft. And so why are we all here? The reason we're here and the reason that this is important and this is valuable is that when we took ChatGPT 4 back in 2023, so this is a lifetime ago in generative AI timelines, humanity, we took the models and we tested them. And we tested them against every single skill that we can test a human on, outside of a skill that is requiring them to move objects for themselves physically through space. That's robots. We haven't gotten there yet. But any measured skill set that we can test a person on, when we just had the model take the test, the person was copying and pasting the questions into the model, hitting run, getting the answers, putting it back into the test. Turns out model performed across the board at the 80th percentile across any skill that we could measure. This is language, reading comprehension, writing, sentiment analysis. I know people that have trouble teasing out sentiment analysis from more than just text and audio when they have the full picture and body language. And the fact that it's even able to do that with limited data is super interesting. Creativity, generation of art, imagery, creative writing, more than just generating text, but generating true creative writing. Music production, video production, all within that, as well as innovation, and wouldn't be a true benchmark done by tech kids if we didn't see how it did compared to our standardized test scores. So we ran it through the litany of standardized tests, and we can see GRE 99th percentile, SAT evidence-based reading and writing 93rd percentile, SAT math 89th, LSAT 88th percentile. For a brand new technology getting these level of scores, this is incredible. This is why this is valuable. The models, independent of a user, can operate at the 80 to 85th percentile across any skill that we can measure. And so from that, we can start to formulate a hypothesis that if I had this tool and I was running up against a task and I needed a skill set to move forward, I am a novice, well below the 80th percentile in the skill set, and I use this tool. Does it bring me to the 80th percentile? Can I now perform at that level? And can I now move forward in this task, in this workflow, in this thing that we're trying to do? And that's a very solid hypothesis. And luckily, Harvard and BCG already tested this for us. So Harvard, fancy school in Massachusetts, you may have heard of it. BCG, Boston Consulting Group, one of the top tech consulting firms, decided, hey, let's partner up and do a quick study. Let's take your team of highest performing tech consultants, valedictorians, salutatorians, 4.0, like rock star people in consulting. Let's split them into two cohorts. Let's give some of them ChatGPT. Let's give some of them not. And let's see what happens. The results were pretty groundbreaking. And again, this isn't just your average person. This is your type A go-getter, top performing consultant to begin with. So we're already working with a biased, high-performing sample size. Within this group, we saw an increase of 12.5% more work done per unit time. We saw an increased rate of work done, 25.1% compared to control. And I think the most important thing is we saw an increase in quality of work by as high as 40% compared to control. To me, this sounds like our hypothesis is being proven. What we really see is a movement to the right in the Bell distribution of performance of a given skill set. We compared baseline to using AI. Control versus using AI. And what we can see here is clearly the group that use AI, the distribution is almost identical. The amount of people scoring across the bell curve. This is just further to the right. And so what this technology really does, what its true value is it takes users in your organization and it moves them to the right on their performance in a given skill set. What would it mean to your business? What would it mean to you personally?
Hey, Austin, quick question. Chat, they're asking what kind of work tasks were performed. Do you know from the study?
It was 28 standard consulting work tasks. They took a sample of 28 different tasks that reflected the average spread of tasks that an Accenture consultant would get throughout a given year. So it was a really good mirroring of their real job. One of them was, hey, you're working with a shoe company. You need to design a new shoe, a marketing campaign, and a go-to-market and a sales strategy. Go. I would really like to use as someone who's been using generative AI for almost 2 years now, I would want to use generative AI to do that task if I am not if I personally am not an expert in shoe design, and I'm not personally an expert in outbound marketing campaigns, and I'm not personally an expert in go-to-market strategies. I can take advantage of the overcoming the skill set deficit, 80th percentile measurement that we saw, and I can generate work faster. And before we move on, and guys, do we have the ability, we would like to come off mute and ask the question out and raise our hand. That will just ensure that I'm able to get to the question without having to stop to go through the chat.
Yeah, I'll try to help keep an eye on chat too for you.
Okay, appreciate it. Some study considerations. Not all studies are perfect. Anyone that is showing that generative AI is showing any studies that this is a magic bullet solution, I would be very skeptical of that. So what are the considerations here with this study? We did see that low performers saw a 43% increase in quality, while high performers saw a 17%. So we can expect to see a rate of limiting returns the higher a person is on a given skill set, as opposed to the quality, the increase in quality output. And that makes sense, right? If you're scoring at a 50% and we give you a 50% increase, we can get you all the way up to a 75. If you're rocking a 95% and I give you a 50% increase, I can get you to 97.5. We just have less headroom to grow, but that's okay. Some participants, however, saw a decrease of productivity by as much as 23% and saw a decrease in quality in work done by 23% on some tasks. We have conflicting data now. We know that the model, independent of a user, can perform 80th percentile at any given skill. We know that when we take and test this in the real world, that most of the time we're going to see increases in quality, increases in performance, increases in efficiencies, but sometimes we're going to see a loss. We're going to get to how do we grapple with this? But it's good to call out, because anybody that says AI, magic bullet, can solve all your problems, magic things, they don't fully understand. I always like to be very honest. Additional consideration, the study was conducted in September of 2023 with ChatGPT-4, which again, in the world of AI is a lifetime ago, technically 4 lifetimes ago, because since then we've come out with GPT-4o, which is a traditional general generative pre-transformer AI system that has PhD writing capabilities. Then later, O1 was dropped, which has advanced reasoning. And so it has the ability to break things out, complex problems into increment individual steps, and then determine which of these steps is the best way to go. I could do a whole lecture on that one alone. After GPT-O1, GPT-O3, which isn't even fully released yet. They have an O3 mini and an O3 high out. They had to make harder benchmarks for this model. People that are making this stuff are really obsessed with the benchmark tests that are specific to math, science, and coding and abstract reasoning. For GPT-O3, they started to see it saturating the benchmarks. The scores were no longer meaningful. They were too high. So they had to create harder benchmark tests for this model specifically. Reason for bringing all that up is when we're looking at the study that was done in 2023 with 4 models ago, so much has already changed. Everything we talk about still applies, but some of the limitations that come into the decrease in work done by 23% decrease in quality really came down to tasks needing complex reasoning skills. Back in 2023, you couldn't do that. And so the model was going to do not as great for you, as well as the model was not a PhD level writer back then. It was a AP high school level writer back then. Big jump. And so what are the current capabilities then? If a lot has changed, things still apply. Some of the limitations we can get around now, but what are the current capabilities? So to put it in perspective, was it codes the timeline? GPT-4, which is natural language understanding and text generation only, happened in 2023, and the world lost their minds. GPT-4o, which brings in multimodal, i.e. text, images, audio, more than one modal array. Where was I? Yes, GPT-4o, multimodal, can process and generate more than just text, can process and generate text, images, and audio. GPT-o1, September 2024, advanced reasoning, problem solving, chain of thoughts, the ability to break things down into smaller problems, solve those problems that build upon recursively, i.e. the solving of step 1 is leverage to solve step 2 type of a thing. That was a huge thing. And then performance benchmarks. Not going to get into really too much about what these are, other than that a lot of people in Silicon Valley, all the AI tech engineers, really care about these numbers, and it's what moves the market and affects NVIDIA stock. So it's good to know just that these exist and where things are scoring, as we may have conversations about AI and capabilities and other maybe foreign models that are claiming to be as good as these things. And we can maybe come in with a little bit of a more informed viewpoint. Performance benchmarks. GPT-4, which again, September was the model that study was based off of, for the MMLU scored an 86.4, going to 4.0 scored it to 88.7. Modest marginal increase there. We got the MMU, where GPT-4 had a 34.9%, where GPT-4o, 69.1. That is the difference between a difficult conversation with the parents in summer school versus D+, or if you got a really nice teacher, a solid C- if they round for you. That's huge though. That's a massive jump in the breakthroughs and the technology capabilities. And then the Math Olympiad, this is the real one that all the AI people go crazy over, because math and science, really challenging for non-reasoning models. And so GPT-4o, not a reasoning model, still living in the traditional text prediction engine world, scored a 13%. GPT-o1, their first reasoning model, 83%. That is astounding. There is no other models at the time that could score that. All this to say, everything we talked about in that study, the value of generative AI, still applies. It's just and more we can do now. So really exciting time. And happy to be sharing this information with you. So what are the key takeaways from the value of generative AI? The key takeaways from the study: when generative AI is used to complete certain tasks, performance goes up massively. However, on some other tasks, see a drop in performance. Different models have different capabilities and therefore different use cases based on the needs of what we're trying to do. And it's up to the user to figure this all out for yourself, because there is no handbook, there is no instruction manual, there is no guide to generative AI, at least not yet. We're all figuring it out together. So what do we do with this? How do we move forward? How do we make sure that we're using it on the right things and not the wrong things? And how do we just make sense of all this? And so I like to end this section with a quote from one of my favorite authors, Ethan Mollick. He is a professor at the Wharton School of Business, co-author of a book, Co-Intelligence. Highly recommend it to anybody. I've probably sold more copies of this book without an affiliate link than I've sold things that I even get paid for to sell at this point. So without further ado, quote, AI is weird. No one actually knows the full range of capabilities of the most advanced large language models, like GPT-4. No one really knows the best ways to use them or the conditions in which they fail. There's no instruction manual. On some tasks, AI is immensely powerful. On others, it fails completely, or worse, in my opinion, subtly. And unless you use AI a lot, unless you practice, you won't know which is which. And that leads us into the concept of the jagged frontier of current AI capabilities. when we as humans who think very linearly are working with a product, working with a technology, working with a solution, we very much get caught in this. Oh, if it can do A is very similar to B, it should also be able to do B equally as well as it completed task A. When it comes to generative AI, think of each one of these towers we see on the screen as a capability of the model, of an individual capability of what it could or what it's going to try to do. The further away from the castle, from the center of the castle, the more robust that capability is, the higher level of performance it will have in that capability. This one all the way out here, that is that PhD level writing capability. However, if we take 2 steps to the right and go all the way back, that capability right next to it is terrible. It is elementary school at best, being that close to the castle, let alone all these things up there. There is no map, there is no guide. And we're all figuring that out together. And we're like kind of making the guide as like crowdsource thing, as a culture of people that use this. But at least for right now, there isn't a way to know exactly what you're going to find when you try to do something. If you're going to find yourself at the jagged frontier, at the emergent of its capabilities, or if you're going to find yourself way back where it's actually not good at that yet. And so the key takeaway there is we need to use this stuff. This is 100% a learn by doing. It's incredibly powerful when applied correctly. Like when, say, nuclear fission is used to power cities for clean energy, and it's all done correctly, and it's very safe, it's great, versus that same technology leveling that same city and making it uninhabitable for decades and generations to come. Same underlying technology, very different applications. And so that is a very stark contrast. No, we're not going to find anywhere near that level of disparity and safety versus risk, but we will see potentially that disparity in capabilities and good results versus low capabilities and bad results. Any questions before we move on the true value of generative AI that we've gone over so far? Before we move into what is a large language model and the high level overview. Okay, so we know that this stuff helps us overcome skill sets. How does it help us do that? All right, we'll move on. So next up, I like to just quickly go over in the least technical way possible. I am not a technical person. So if you were all afraid we were going to go too deep, don't worry, nowhere near ones and zeros, just basic language. So what is a large language model? Easiest way to think about this is it is the world's most expensive autocomplete technology ever made. The technology that has been the bane of the existence of an entire generation, causing awkward conversations and walkback statements and terrible emails, autocomplete. This is that technology. It's just the most expensive one ever made. And it has 2 primary functions that dictate how it interacts with the world and with users. All right. So core functionality number 1, guess the next word. So just like autocomplete is trying to guess the next word in your sentence or series of words in the sentence that you are writing in a text message or an email, this takes that to the 1000th degree and is going to try to not only guess the next word in a sentence or a string, but guess the next correct set of words in a passage that is exchanged via back and forth with via prompting with the user. But that's fundamentally what it's trying to do. It's trying to guess the next word. Number 2 is make the user happy with guessing the next word. I want to call out truth, facts, reality are not coded into this. It is 2 functions. Guess the next word with as high of a statistical likelihood of accuracy as humanly possible. Get as close to that 99.99999% calculation and try to make the user happy with what you give. And so it turns out if we take a text prediction engine, we give it those 2 core functions, guess the next word, make end user happy. We give it all of the data that humans have ever generated and digitized, ever. We put hundreds of millions of dollars of supercompute and GPUs to train, and we just tell the model, figure it out. Just figure it out. Here's all of human language. We're going to come back and check on you in a bit, see what you figured out. And that's what we call unsupervised training. This is where generative AI and traditional machine learning or deep learning as we know it has a big difference. Whereas traditional machine learning, deep learning is supervised training, i.e., I want to make an app that can recognize animals. I want to make an app that can recognize dogs. I'm going to have to scrape the internet for all the dog pictures ever. And I'm going to have to label them dog. Because step one is I need to get the model to determine dog versus not dog. Any fans of the show Silicon Valley? Very similar to Jing Yang's hot dog, not hot dog. That's what we call supervised training. Unsupervised training is petabyte of dog data, dog images, figure it out. Also, here's everything written ever about dogs. Also figure that out. We're not going to tell you what a dog is. You're just going to have seen the word dog about 20 million times in the training data. And that was next to another set of words. And so because it's a text prediction engine that's trying to guess the next word that's trained on all of human data powered by supercompute run on unsupervised training, turns out you do enough of this at scale, you get digital IQ points. That's the formula. Data plus compute, text prediction engine plus unsupervised training equals IQ points. And the two primary levers there are data and compute, or at least that's what we have been seeing. We'll get into it deeper, but we might actually be hitting a little bit of a wall there. At a very basic level, the way that this works, when OpenAI decided, hey, I want to try to make AI, they said, all right, text prediction engine, we're going to ingest all this data. We're going to have the model analyze it. We're going to have it run pattern recognition and then do predictive analysis and repeat. 24/7, 365, thousands and thousands of GPUs, massive data centers, tons of power until it figured it out. And the way that it figured it out is, turns out, human language can be whittled down to a series of rules and relationships. And what the models do, what is known as a parameter or a weight, is through looking at the vast amount of training data, running analysis on it, running pattern recognizers, it was able to develop weights. And a weight is simply, I have a word in my training set, dog. A weight is that representation of that word's relationship with all other words in its training set. This provides the model with the ability for what seems to be contextual understanding, emotional and relational understanding. Because if you're trying to guess the next word in a sentence, if the user is happy versus the user is sad, that is going to be or whatever emotion they may be feeling, that's probably going to have severe influence on that last word. If that's true, and I'm trying to get that last word as accurate as humanly possible, I actually need to figure out how your emotional state is, because that's going to be a factor. And there's a ton of other factors that go in. And so what this means is that through its tree training, as it pertains to weights, it was able to develop a two-dimensional map of meaning of the English language. Two-dimensional map of meaning of human language. And then when it went multimodal and we developed transformers, we now have the ability to understand the relationship between text, i.e. words, images, and sound. And we start to not only have our map of written language, we have a four-dimensional map of human language. And this provides access to insights into the creative. And pulling this all together, we have a technology that we know operates at the 80th percentile at any skill set that it's measured. When studied, helps people generally work faster and better when used on the right things. We can put all this together and we can use this tool. We can tap into that wealth of knowledge as captured and processed in the pre-training to create expertise and skill set. This is why the model, independent of a user, operates at the 80th percentile of every skill that we can measure. It's just a byproduct of this text prediction engine that's been trained on all this data, trying to guess the next word and make the end user happy. Because when we're asking it something, the model is trying to guess what is the correct string of words. Easiest way to think about this is when we open up a chatbot and we have nothing in the text box yet, we've yet to put in a prompt. At that moment, the amount of possible orientations of different words, or in the model's language, tokens, that it can give you is literally infinite. It is both everything and nothing all at once. As soon as we put in a single letter, let alone a full word, that total amount of possible tokens that we can get back becomes finite. It's massive for sure, beyond comprehension, but it is a finite number. And so we can tap into expertise and skill set simply because it's sitting in the model. We just need to get access to it via prompting. And so this allows us to access new skill sets, manufacture expertise, help with any task at hand, create subject matter experts. And this is the payoff. These are the 5 tenets. This is if we only take one thing away from this session, it is this slide right here. Concepts of structured prompting. So creating skill set and expertise is a byproduct of simply tapping into it. It's trying to guess the next most statistically likely set of words. If we know anything about statistics, the bigger the data set of comparison, the more normalized, the more average the response is going to be, or the results are going to be. This is why studies showing a groundbreaking scientific research that has a sample of 1 means nothing to the world. Whereas a sample of 100 million, even with a 3% accuracy, not nearly that great, but we're pretty confident that because of the data set and the normalization of the response to it, that this is right. And so just like in statistics and in evaluating things like that, we think about it from the model's perspective. When it has a massive amount of potential words, potential tokens it could give you back, the more average the response is going to feel, because it's just, I can give you 15 billion different responses. I have to calculate the most likely response within that 15 billion. That's going to be what we would know as the average, and what we perceive as meh. That's good. Helps, right? But not groundbreaking. It's not super valuable. And so by creating a structured prompt following these core tenets, we can take the total possible amount of tokens, 15 billion, just as a random number example, and we could drop that down to maybe a few thousand. We can hone in, we can cleave all of the unnecessary tokens, all of the unnecessary relationships, all of the unnecessary data within that training set to get right to that expertise. We just need to tell the model that it is. So core tenet number 1, we want to create an expert. We want to treat the model like a person. We don't want to anthropomorphize it too much. It's not a person, it's not sentient, but we want to think about it and treat it like a person. Most importantly, we want to tell it who that person is. And so if you're sitting and you are just thinking, hey, I'm working on this project, it'd be so great if I had a world-class Pulitzer Prize winning author and editor to review my work, to give me some critical feedback. Effective immediately, you are a Pulitzer Prize winning business author, or business, whatever it would be, with 10 years of experience running a publication as editor-in-chief. Everything in that data set that does not pertain to or is not relevant to communications, writing, through the perspective of a Pulitzer Prize winning author and editor-in-chief of a magazine, for example, is pulled out of consideration. And so we went from 15 billion now to maybe like 10,000 total tokens possibility. Well, now anything we do in that data set, now the statistical likelihood becomes very powerful. And that's where we really tap into it. So treat the model like a person, tell it who it is, impart skill set, credentialing, degrees, years of experience. You get to make this person up completely out of thin air. Have fun with it. Give them an accent, give them a name, give them a title, whatever you want to do. And more descriptive is always better. So that's core tenet number 1, treat like a person, tell it who it is, define skill set, expertise. Number 2 is define the model's role to you in relation to you for the engagement. Fancy way of saying, what are they here to do? Hey, all right, you summoned me. I'm Don't know why I'm not in my New York office boardroom presenting on the magazine campaign, but I'm here right now. I'm an editor-in-chief. Or if you got me, what am I here? What am I here to do? Think about it like that. What are you here? What are they here to do? Tell them exactly. So effective immediately, you are X, tasked with assisting me complete Y at its most fundamental. Expertise, role, purpose, function. Step number 3, tell the model how you want it to work with / for you or for you to complete said task. If it's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, editor-in-chief, I'm probably going to say, review my first draft, give me critical feedback to improve it, measure its strengths and weaknesses, and then steel man your argument. So give me both sides. Give me your brutal, honest critique, and then paint me in the positive light. So my ego isn't hurt too much, and I can take on the painful things you're going to say to me. That would be an example. Or start by doing this, then generate that, check with me to see if that is correct. Tell the model how you want it to work with and for you. This is where we impart process. Or provide any additional considerations, assumptions, exclusions, context. Because again, the model's trying to guess the most correct set of words back to you. And everything we put into that chatbot limits the total amount of possibilities of tokens it can give us back. The more detailed we are with our explanations and our prompting, the more impressed we will be with the output of the model that will reflect the expertise and the skill set that we are defining within step 1. I am prominent in AI. Review this article that I'm writing to make sure that I am tactfully riding the wave of the AI hype without overselling, because I do not fully ascribe to, and make sure that it is received in such and such a way. Because the model was trained on human language is thinking in real time. Thinking in real time is us taking our concepts and our meanings and trying to map them to words to communicate intention and meaning and subject to others. And so the model is doing that, just reverse engineering it to get you your response. And that step is key. And then so lastly, goes without saying, but I do always say it, define the expected output or the outcome from the engagement. Is it writing an email? Is it writing a document? Is it generating HTML, CSS, JavaScript code output that you can copy and paste into a text editor and open and run with your Chrome web browser? Is it drafting a is it drafting a case study article written for a business publication? Also done that. We can, again, get really creative with it. We're limited by the bounds of our imagination. And if all we take away from this call and the session is this slide, you will be, and you internalize it, you will be massively impressed with what you can do here. So, any questions? No, I just covered a lot. No questions. All right. And so I know we are coming up on time here. Rounded out Copilot as the AI for business. Everything we've talked about so far has just been generative AI through the lens of ChatGPT products, because that's what was studied. Well, Copilot is going to be what I would recommend as your number one, or at least your first generative AI solution for a commercial practice, for a commercial application. That is because Microsoft Copilot is less of a product, and it's actually more of a brand. It's Microsoft's suite of generative AI products that allows an end user to interact with data via natural language. And the data set that we're interacting with, i.e. the external part of this wheel, will determine the Copilot product we use to complete a given thing, the inner part of the wheel. And within Copilot, we have Copilot for Web, as this is the version of Copilot that, as Mike had mentioned, comes included in everybody's O365 M365 license. If you have a Microsoft license that gives you emails, applications, Teams, SharePoint, you have Copilot for Web today. We know that it's Copilot for Web, and because we are signed into our Copilot app or our Edge browser with our Work for School credentials. and we see this green little shield of data protection security. Everything we put into this model is containerized and protected. Everything it gives us back is containerized and protected. There is no opportunity for anybody outside of your organization or within Microsoft to see or use this data for any purpose ever, which is a fundamental thing, is why we want to start thinking about, as we're adopting generative AI solutions and coming up with policies, providing Copilot for web as we're going to ask questions of the known internet as our data set. And then Copilot for work when we're going to want to work with information or data that's in our Microsoft environment, which is Copilot for 365. We can see when we're in our Copilot app that we're in it because it's toggled to work. We've got these pre-built prompts that allow us to select either emails or documents or people within our organization to tag and interact with. We also see that we have the green shield of data protection and compliance in the upper right. And the reason that we want to leverage Copilot, especially when working with internal company data that should not leave the company and should not end up in someone else's server or on someone's Reddit page or on some dark web page, really comes down to data and security. And so when we leverage Copilot, especially when we're leveraging Copilot to interact with information in Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, anywhere in our environment that is potentially sensitive, what we're doing is we're really just sending a prompt to our Copilot agent. There's a Copilot relay that you get access to in your tenant that can communicate with Microsoft's Azure OpenAI, that is the large language model powering your Copilot interaction. And so when we put in our prompts, i.e. we put in those words that are going to dictate what it gives back to us, the Copilot resource takes that information, pre-processes it, and grounds it. It checks the Microsoft graph, which is where all of your data is currently stored. It post-processes it, sends it to the large language model to do its thing, and then sends it back to you. The most important thing here and why we like Copilot is your data does not leave your organization ever. If we're interacting with an email, an Excel document, a Teams chat, a PowerPoint file, a Word doc, and we ask questions about it, we haven't do anything with it, representations that are encrypted of that data source go to the large language model, not the data itself. It's a lot like a description of the documents and alphanumerics that pertain to pieces of information that are pertinent to the prompt within the document goes to the model. The model knows what to do with it, sends it back, decrypts it, sends it back to you as an intelligent response that answered your question or generated the thing that you were looking for. All of this right here on the backside, steps 3 and 4, once we see it, arrows coming in and away from the large language model, once the transaction in the session is over, Microsoft wipes the data, deletes it, wipes the memory, deletes the data. You've got a history of chats on this side, so you can recall and Microsoft will rerun for you. But as a default, on the back end, they delete it, ensuring that anything you put into the system, anything it gives you back, is only used for what you're using it for. It doesn't get used to train their model. It doesn't get used to train their data. It doesn't get used for anything else other than what we're using it for. And because if we're talking about Copilot and we have all of our stuff in Teams and SharePoint and Exchange, we already, whether we are willing to admit it or not, implicitly trust Microsoft to house this data for us and keep it safe and not sell it and not do anything nefarious with it. Adding Copilot into that doesn't change things. Whereas if we take this information out of our Microsoft environment and we put it into a third-party system through a web browser, we now lose control. We are at the mercy and the will of the person on the other end of that data center that may or may not come across what you put in and may or may not make a decision that we might not like of what they do with that data. And so that is why Copilot is the AI for your organization. It allows you to benefit from the capabilities of the technology when we want to generate expertise and the information to answer our questions or do what we're trying to do is not in our environment. We go to Copilot for web. When the answers to our questions, the data that's required to do what we're trying to do is within our environment and we can access it and we can tag it, we're going to do that with Copilot. Across those systems, you'll be able to manufacture all the expertise and skill set. You'll be able to create untold amounts of business process transformation. and you just gotta start.
I got a question for you, Austin. And thank you for this presentation. Very good to understand what AI actually represents. And you were talking about it's predicting like the next word, but then in infinity. But what I've learned from using AI is that it's getting very good at what the next word, sentence, and chapter, book, whatever it is. But it's pretty, its memory isn't that good remembering what it has said like a couple of threads before. How do you see that evolving and have a solution for that? Because that's limiting the AI at this stage, right?
That is limiting the AI at this stage. And so that is something that Microsoft is going to have to adjust the dials on. That's actually a good point to bring up. And so when we are thinking about Copilot versus another large language model generative AI solution, such as a ChatGPT, such as an Anthropic's Claude, such as a Facebook's Meta's Llama 3, there's 1,600 plus large language models available for selection in Azure AI Foundry. That just show you how many models there are. There's a lot. When we're thinking about this versus that, it's almost never going to be an either or situation. It's going to be more of a yes and situation. We're just going to have a litmus test that determines when one solution is more appropriate than the other. When we're looking at Copilot, we are making some sacrifices. It's not as good as ChatGPT. It's not as good as Claude. If you go toe to toe with it, it's comparable, but it's not better than. They are arguably better than. So we're giving up some performance, but what are we gaining from it? Security, compliance, peace of mind that at least this trillion-dollar company that we may have some feelings about or not runs on trust as a very big thing there. Security and compliance and not letting customer data get leaks, not letting customer data be exploited is a big tenet of Microsoft's. And so that just comes down to who do you trust more with your sensitive company data. And so if we're interacting with stuff or we're asking questions that are work related, that if we're really honest with ourselves, probably wouldn't love it if we just took this whole thread and posted it on Reddit. The whole screenshot of everything that we're doing in the chatbot just made it to Reddit. If that's going to get you fired, maybe don't use an OpenAI, don't use a Claude, don't use a Grok, and definitely don't use DeepSeek. If it is going to get you fired, use Copilot for web. If we're asking questions of the internet, use Copilot for work. If we're asking questions of work data. But if the answer to that question is, no, this is public information, I wouldn't get fired for this. At least no, absolutely not. I'm certain, 100% certain I would not get fired. Then go use those other models. I have a Gemini and I use all of them, including Copilot. GPT-01 is really good reasoner. I use it for planning. 03, I also use for really deep, complex planning sessions. It's when I want to generate something that I'll toggle into a GPT-4o, PhD and guess the next word person to generate the things, but planning is a different skill set than executing. At a human level, makes sense that it would be at the model level. A person who can articulate, hey, this is going to be the best plan of action to accomplish a goal, probably not going to be the best person to go write the most eloquent piece explaining that to private equity firms to get back to skill sets. And so doing that, using other models for what they are, but then again, for work purposes, as soon as we hit that, I'm doing something for work, this isn't public information. I want to use generative AI. Do I use Copilot for web? Do I use Copilot for work, or a mix of the two? The next workshop that I usually like to do, normally this workshop is the two workshops we're doing is one workshop that's 2.5 hours long. Didn't want to do that to you guys. So we're going to do follow-up where we actually apply this information. Come back and Copilot 101 tours, and we actually start working to build prompts and doing some exercises to not only take these 5 core tenets of generative AI interactions and start using them, but start figuring out ways to map them and our prompt writing skills and our prompt writing styles to map that to business processes that are done by you in attendance. So that at the end of that session, everybody leaves with at least one prompt that solves one problem that they can use right then and there.
Great. I can't wait for that session to happen. We've planned it for our next webinar, so that's great. Mike, do you want to close the webinar for us?
Yeah, guys, thank you everybody for being in attendance today. Thank you, Austin, for all the information, helping us really get up to speed on some of the practical applications of AI, how we can use it for our business. We're looking forward to the next session. I love the idea of having people create prompts with you live, understand maybe in a more practical fashion. How do we put our hands around this? How do we make it work for our businesses and improve our business processes and start making an impact? Thanks everybody for your time. We appreciate being here. Have a great one. We'll see you next time.